became successful, and therefore it changed from a jazz fest to a jazz and blues fest to a music fest.
Right, right.
Because they were bringing in Velcro pygmies.
Yeah, and they try to have that one large show where they charge like $30 or whatever.
You know, and get tons of kids to come out.
Right.
And so it involves a lot of the young people, whereas before it was more cultural, it seemed.
Mm-hmm.
They had really high-class cats that toured with all the greats, and then they'd come home and...
Yeah, and play the fest.
You know, Tony Bennett's bass player would be doing his thing.
Yeah,
and,
Cleve Eaton would come up from this area. Yeah. I love that guy. Yeah. He still plays around here quite a bit.
Yeah.
Played that bass. So you grew up in Minnesota, right?
That's where I grew up.
In close to Minneapolis, or?
Well, Minneapolis, St. Paul's, the Twin Cities, a big city.
Right.
500,000 people maybe. And then, you know, the suburbs sprawl out from there. Well, the furthest western suburb, about 20 miles out.
Okay.
Wayzata.
Yeah.
Lake Minnetonka.
Oh, yeah. Remember that from the Prince movie.
Beautiful place. Yeah.
Yeah. You have a brother, is that right?
I've got three brothers.
Three
One
brothers?
has passed, but yeah.
Okay. What'd your dad do?
He was, his passion was flying.
Oh, really? My dad too, actually.
Yeah. So he enlisted in the war days, World War II, and he was all part of that naval thing. He was like a chief engineer. He flew some of the planes, some of the reconnaissance biplanes, and then he moved on from there and got a job with the government, worked for the Defense Department, contracting and overseeing inspectors and that sort of stuff. And then he carried on with his reserves forever. You know, he had stripes all the way down.
Oh, yeah. All the
flew helicopters. They'd land these big helicopters in our backyard when he'd come home from a 2-week tour.
Oh, really?
Florida or California.
Oh, you'd love that as a kid, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Dad's coming home.
Yeah.
You could hear it, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Totally illegal, but they drop them off in the field.
What are they going to do, right? Yeah. Were you musical as a kid?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. What did you start with?
Well, my father showed me how to work a ukulele. And at the same time, he was showing my brothers how to play guitar.
So they're older?
Yeah, 4 and 6 years older. So
Okay.
I fooled with their guitars also trying to learn. I guess I was 5 or 6 maybe when the ukulele started entering into things.
It's perfect size, too.
And then he used to go down after dinner in the basement and sit on this old beat up piano and goof around with it. He wasn't very good, but he loved it, and so I'd sit there with him. And he kind of showed me how to make a chord and how the mathematics of it all worked.
Right.
Counting system of building chords on a piano. But then I kind of, you know, it's kind of, I can't remember much I can remember learning how to play clarinet.
Okay.
I was probably in the 4th grade, maybe.
Learn a little jazz on it, or?
Well, in school, learning the basics, then I became the first chair clarinetist next to the girls.
Right, clarinet.
In the school, and then they gave me some sort of award for best musical student. And then I went on to what we call middle school, junior high when I was growing up. And it was just too square to be in the band anymore.
It's not where the cool kids are, right?
I had to sit between 2 girls instead of at the end. So
Those days were numbered. What kind of music was playing in your house growing up?
well, there's always the musical television.
Okay.
Sing along with Mitch, you know, the Johnny Cash shows, the Nat King Cole, all those musical shows, Doris Day, all that crap, you know. So that was always something my parents were watching. So there was always that popular
Soaking
music
it in.
coming at us, and so I kind of would always sit and sing along. You know?
So
sing along with Mitch was great because they put the words up
Oh,
there
yeah.
and the ball would bounce and everybody sing along. It was goofy as
older
heck.
brothers are good for turning you on to stuff. What'd they turn you on to?
No,
They didn't?
They didn't. Not in this case.
They're not
no.
musical?
They were. My oldest brother was quite good at wind instruments, but he never really followed through with it. He was a real kind of a loser outcast, oddball.
Yeah, every family's got one, right?
Yeah, and then my second oldest brother, he was just a James Dean hellion, you know.
Okay.
So
he's out tearing it up.
was in trouble all the time.
Yeah.
He didn't know how to avoid trouble.
That sounds like fun, though.
But he did play bass in a bit of a surf type band. Mm-hmm. Nothing serious.
What years are we talking about? When did you grow up?
That would have been the mid 60s,
okay.
early 60s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was learning how to play guitar probably. I probably got my first guitar when I was 13 or 14 maybe.
Okay. What was it? Was it acoustic?
A Blackstone.
Okay.
Tesco,
yeah.
Tesco Blackstone.
That's the good stuff. I like those.
And I haven't seen one for sale since
I know.
I've been looking over the last couple, 3 years.
It seems they just all disappeared and everybody has them in their basement somewhere.
Yeah, and they want like $300-400 for them. It's like, what?
Yeah.
It's like a $12 guitar or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. And you know Microwave Dave, right? From
Yeah,
up in
of course.
Huntsville. He has an affinity for those late 60s Japanese guitars, and he has eyes all around Huntsville in the pawn shops.
Sure.
And if they get one in, they call him, and he just immediately goes down and buys it. Even though, most of them, the electronics are garbage, but, it's just so sentimental to him.
Hound Dog Taylor played one. Mm-hmm. He had like 5 pickups.
Yeah,
on it,
yeah.
He just
Yeah, those are great.
tore it up with them. It sounded horrible, but
Yeah.
it was great.
It makes a lot of noise.
If I'm not mistaken, I saw Mississippi's Fred McDowell playing like a Kingston.
Okay.
Which was similar to that Tesco.
Yeah. Jack White, the newer blues
Yes.
guy, he plays a lot of those
Yes.
as well.
Yes,
He says he does it for the challenge.
That's
to
probably
keep
why
up-
the prices are so high right now.
Yeah, because you get some guy like him with them, everybody wants one. Yeah.
Sure.
So were you in bands in high school, or
Yeah.
yeah, not the band, but bands?
Yeah.
What kind of music was it?
Well, it started out playing with my neighbors.
Okay.
I had one neighbor especially that was really into music, and he had a space and equipment, so we'd go over there and jam.
Okay.
Then we ended up playing in a little combo. It's probably 7th or 8th grade, playing for some parties, playing in a little youth center.
You guys doing strictly covers?
Yeah.
So who were you covering?
Yeah, it was
Stones?
whatever was popular at the time. Probably a lot of who did the Nashville Cats?
Oh, yeah.
Lovin' Spoonful.
Yeah.
That was real popular at the time. Some of the Stones, Yardbirds.
Yeah, I love the Yardbirds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was as a kid watching this show, I think it was called Hullabaloo.
Okay.
All these blonde-haired guys,
What'd your dad think of those guys? He didn't care? So a military guy didn't rail at the television?
He didn't.
Okay.
No, he
Well, that's
didn't.
cool.
It was musical, and I think and he had an ear for the lyrical side of music, so a melody always kind of got his attention.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So even like Beatles and stuff like
Yeah.
that, he kind of enjoyed that because there was a lyrical sense to it.
Right.
He liked that
Right.
kind of. I mean, he liked the Dixieland jazz probably the best.
Oh, yeah.
He liked guys like Nat King Cole and
Like Fats
Johnny
Domino?
Mathis. My mother was just adored Johnny
Yeah.
Mathis. And
I like
she
Johnny
cried
Mathis,
like
actually.
a baby when Elvis died. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah.
But
So your first paying gig was probably middle school, junior high?
yeah, it was.
Yeah. Were you,
I was like the rhythm guitarist.
okay. So you stayed electric for a while?
Well, then I also started playing acoustically with a guy.
Okay. Coffee house style?
Yeah. We had this youth center where we could go and play, and there was that. And then there was this little group of young teenagers. But I was listening to guys like Chet Atkins.
Yeah.
Because real melodic guitar work, and so I was learning a lot as to how the guitar worked, all the different chord shapes.
Mm-hmm.
That
That guy's a wizard.
Yeah.
I've got a vinyl of his, an old one.
I didn't realize how good he was
Yeah,
at the
and
time.
he's doing all Beatles songs on it.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I had some friends that had a beginnings of a psychedelic band.
Okay.
Which was much more exciting than
Yeah.
this pop music.
Mm-hmm.
And they needed a bass player.
Okay.
I had been hanging out with them when I heard they needed a bass player. I borrowed my brother's bass that he was using. It wasn't his. He had gotten it from some rich kid that he was playing in the surf band.
Okay.
Big Fender jazz bass. Golly, that thing was heavy, hard shell case. I weighed about 95 pounds. I was smaller than Miles.
Yeah.
I carried that thing for 2 miles one time to get to the gig. So I wanted to be in that band so bad. And so that started probably 15, 16, maybe, lasted a couple years.
Mm-hmm. Did you guys ever record?
No, we never did. We were really the outcast of our hometown.
Mm-hmm.
So when we played gigs, we had to go further out in the country.
Okay. Yeah.
They didn't know who
Yeah.
we were.
Yeah, it took a while for psychedelic to get to.
We brought those girls in, and then we went out and played for those.
That's funny.
Those people.
Yeah. So I have to ask, how does a white dude from Minnesota end up being a Delta blues guru?
Yeah.
So when did you stumble across it? Was it Robert or?
Well, I'm not a Delta blues guru, but I love that style of music the most of the blues. I love that style. I love that Chicago blues style,
Sure.
electric stuff. But because I'm solo, I stick with.
Right. You can do your own percussion with it.
Yeah. I don't know, I got into blues. I was in this psychedelic band. And then I got into blues and started trying to play Chicago blues.
Right.
But it was, white boy blues. It was Savoy Brown, Fleetwood Mac, John Mayall. Butterfield, trying to, and then finally realizing that all these old guys were the key to all that good music.
Still around.
And then...
So we're talking early 70s now, or still late 60s?
This is 60s, yeah.
Okay.
And then I had a friend that was a folkie, and he played a lot of Pete Seeger and Bob Dylan and stuff like that. Well, we started playing blues together as a duo. I played slide, because I was just starting to learn how to play slide. And so I backed him up as he sang, and he had a little harmonica on him, played his... We started playing real basic blues stuff, and that was working real well. So there was a blues band that I was in. Probably when I turned 18, we formed a blues band. And at the same time, I was also playing with this friend of mine as a duo.
You remember what that band was called?
The band? Lake Street Stink Band.
I knew it had to be good.
It was.
Lake Street Stink
I
Band.
remember we had this great gig, and the owner I remember hearing him talking to somebody on the phone. We got this great band playing, but they got the most terrible name. It's the Lake Street Stink Band.
That's great. That's great.
And so there was that band, and then Wayne White and myself playing as the Barrel House duo. And that just went on like that for a couple of years, maybe. We were doing some pretty cool stuff when I look back at it.
Traveling, doing some gigs all over?
Yeah, that, and like the University of Minnesota had us come in. I was like 18. I went in and lectured the students.
Wow.
On the blues.
On the blues, of course. Why not, right?
They were older than I was, and I had finished high school, but
Yeah.
So that was kind of like, this is cool. I'm cool. Blah blah blah.
So
So that kind of went on,
yeah.
and then I split and went to Ohio to play with some guys. A friend of mine, his friends were going to college at this really high class college in Ohio, Ohio Wesleyan. It was all these East Coast rich kids. Mm-hmm. So we went there, and it was just like Chi Phi fraternity in Animal House. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was just a mess. These guys were over the edge in a huge way.
Right.
But we had this band, and so we did that. That lasted about a year, and then I came back home. And the band I had been in moved on, and so I started trying to figure out how I could play as a solo. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't going to work because I couldn't sing for beans. So I started working with Kim Wilson in this really good blues band. I played bass and a little bit of slide guitar for a couple, 3 years. And that's when I really got the blues exposure. All the guys started piling in from Mississippi and from the Carolinas, from the West Coast, California, from Detroit. And then all the Chicago blues artists were coming up. It was just an incredible lineup of blues coming through for 2-3 good years, maybe longer.
Is that when you start playing with some of the bigger names, getting to sit in and jam?
Yeah, yeah.
You've told some.
Previous to that, like, I got to open up for Booker White, do a couple of shows with him, and I was, probably 18, 19, 20 maybe at the time. And that he was part of this group that the university was bringing up from down there and supplying places for him to play. And then the bars that we were playing in, we weren't old enough to drink, but we were old enough to work in. They started bringing up the electric blues guys. Mm-hmm. And then they started bringing guys like, I got to see Doc Watson, Merle.
When did you discover Robert for the first time, Johnson?
Well, he came real early.
Okay.
When I first got my hands on the first blues albums that I ever saw was, I got T-Bone Walker, I got Robert Johnson, I got Lightning Hopkins.
Yeah.
And something called Negro Prison Blues.
So did you, I know that Clapton talked about he had to eventually set aside some time to kind of deal with Robert and mentally, and finally he devoted a whole record to him. And so you play some Robert pretty much every night. Have you kind of developed that relationship with him where you kind of understand what he was trying to say, where he was coming from, or
I think I got a pretty good idea what his life was like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It comes out in the way you play it. I love to hear you play Traveling Riverside.
Well, it's not real complicated. Mm-hmm. Those guys are doing the same thing.
It's easy for you to say.
What we do.
Yeah.
Run the roads and play gigs.
Right.
And try and stay out of trouble.
Right.
Chase women and have fun.
Yeah.
Drink a lot. And
yeah.
Move on.
Do it again tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's all they were doing. Looking for the spots where people get together and playing music for them and working their way into getting a paid gig or an offer or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was maybe harder for them in some ways, maybe not.
Yeah.
Traveling would have been a real challenge.
Right. What's your best Muddy story? I know you've told a few of them. Getting to play with Muddy a little bit.
I never got to play with him.
Oh, you were around him though, right?
Yeah, I went to his funeral. Mm-hmm. I did a little reefer and champagne with him one night.
What was that like? Was that after a show?
Awesome. It was just totally awesome.
Yeah.
Like hanging out with your idol.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
can imagine.
being that close to him.
Yeah.
And just seeing what they were like.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of guy are you? Are you a egomaniac, or are you real friendly, or what do you like? So
mm-hmm.
trying to talk to people from another world,
right?
An alien, so to speak, and
right.
trying to find some common ground.
Mm-hmm.
And you do that by asking about things that they like, try to figure it out, try to profile them, so to speak.
Right. You'd been around a while when you first met Johnny Shines, right?
Yeah, I didn't get to meet him when I first saw him.
Mm-hmm.
Would have been about 1970. And then running in, tracking him down after finding out that he lived in Tuscaloosa in '88.
And you guys hung out all the way to the end, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Right.
We had about 3 years together.
Mm-hmm.
We probably did 200 shows.
Yeah. Great stories traveling with him.
Yeah, we went all over North America. We flew to a handful of gigs. I drove him to a lot of gigs. We went up to Minnesota I took him to the Boundary Waters in Canada, and we rented a cabin, and I took him out in the wilderness in my bass boat, and
Yeah.
we fished, and I took him hunting, and took
Yeah.
him way out in the woods.
Yeah. So you're kind of you're only once removed from Robert because he played with Robert a little, right?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
ran the roads with
That's pretty
Robert
amazing.
Johnson. Yeah.
Yeah. When did you first go to Europe to play?
Right after Johnny died, I went
So
back.
early '90s.
1992.
Yeah.
It was August, maybe. Yeah.
How do you feel about, as a blues man, you have to pound the roads in Europe to make a living versus America? What's the scene like?
I could do the same thing in America.
Okay.
I did the same thing in America.
Right.
I'm just doing the same thing over there that I did over here.
Is it more compact over there? Or are you traveling pretty good?
I travel 1,000 miles a week.
Do you? Wow. It's pretty amazing.
And, I can do that here. The shows are longer here.
Okay.
So it takes more out of you.
Okay.
I've noticed that as I've gotten older, that it's a little bit harder to recover each.
I would imagine.
The next
Especially
day.
late night shows, right?
Well, yes. I mean, it's not about the time, it's about the amount of time that you
Yeah.
physically are
Being a
singing.
solo artist, especially. I mean, you're working hard up there.
And it's the singing
Yeah.
that really wears you down.
Right.
You sing hard for 2 hours, it's fine. I can.
Yeah. I know
recover.
at my favorite shows, I'm tired. I'm not even doing anything. So tell us about Lead Bessie. How old is she? When did you get her?
Lead Bessie is from 1934, maybe 35, but the serial numbers are between 34 and 35. There's no definitive day, so to speak. So she's 81 years old. I got her, I think it was 1977, so
Okay. So you've had her a while then.
38
She was about 50
years.
when you got her then.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah, my mind's
Or
not
40. No, 40.
multiplying
That's right. It
properly.
was 40. No, you were right. I was wrong. Yeah.
And I got her, and I also got my Gibson L5 at the same time.
Okay.
Right around that same year, 77. I must have had something going on right that
Yeah.
year.
Yeah. Where did you get it?
I think I married my first wife that year too, actually.
Your first ex-wife?
Yeah.
Where did you get Bessie?
A friend of mine that builds guitars took it in on trade.
Okay.
And I had been looking for quite a few years to find one. And almost 10 years I'd been looking to find one. I'd never seen one for sale. And a friend of mine called me up and said, Greg Nelson has a steel guitar in his shop. He just took it in on trade. It was like he was whispering.
Didn't want anyone to get out, right?
So I immediately called Greg up and confronted him with the fact that no, I'm sorry. I went over to his house.
Okay.
And I looked around his house and I found it in his closet. Because I knew he wouldn't have it in the shop.
Okay.
Because he'd know exactly what it was. They were so rare.
Yeah.
And so I sat and I played that guitar all night long. He came in and he said, Ken, why don't you, I said, what's that in your closet? Oh, you haven't seen my steel guitar. He says, you got a steel guitar? Like I didn't know,
Sure.
And I had a $100 bill in my pocket when I went over there. And so he got it out and I was just, I was just in love. And I sat all night playing it. And finally came in he was getting late. And, Ken, why don't you, I said, Greg, you got to sell me this guitar. He said, it's sitting in your closet. I said, if you sell me it, I'll play it all over the world, I promise. I said, if you don't sell it to me, I'm going to move in with you.
And play it every night.
That's right.
How many times has she had a total rebuild? You said she needed some work now.
She's held up pretty good over the years. I mean, she's had frets done once or twice.
Okay.
And she got a custom job, as I told you
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah.
Just
The
recently.
Kent Duchaine special. Yeah.
I figured that, you know, when you look at guitars, you know, and if you're looking for a vintage guitar, you're usually looking for something that's been unmolested and something that's going to increase in value, you know. And you look at her and it's like, there's no hope. She's
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
So I figured, well, I might as well just tear into her because nobody's going to care whether I did this or that. In fact, it might even add value to
Right,
it.
right.
If it's got a bunch of super glue all over it. But
Yeah. Well, she has war stories to tell. Definitely. Well, cool. I guess that's all I had. I appreciate you chatting with me.
Yeah, well, hopefully you can edit that down to something
Yeah.
intelligible.